Good morning, grade 12s, learners of South Africa. My name is Keisha Makata. Today's life science lesson is based on the human eye. It is quite clear and it's quite vital that you know why we are doing the human eye. This is paper 1 under responding to the environment. And let me tell you, grade 12s, it's very important that you know that responding to the environment, it counts 40 marks in your paper 1. So it's very important. I want you to pay attention. I want you to have a pen and paper to write, because when we're dealing with the human eye, you should be able to look at each and every part, and you should be able to speak to it. You should be able to understand what is going on in the eye. So we're going to start our lesson, and I remind you, grade 12s, that you must study using the diagram. So let's start. Now, this is how you can break out your lesson, your chapter on the eye. You have to know that you need to speak to how is this eye protected and how is this eye moving, and we have to look at the structure and functions of the eye. Remember, we're going to look at binocular vision, we're going to look at its importance, we're going to look at accommodation and pupillary mechanisms, and lastly, we're going to look at the diseases of the eye. So as we start, I want to you to pay attention to the exam guideline. You already received this from your teachers. Obviously, you have it in front of you. You must have it every time as you study. So because we are doing the human eye, we are going to go to page 11. What is it that we have to know about the eye? Or what is it that the examiners could ask you about the eye? Let's first look at that. It says there, we need to discuss what receptors are and what they do. And secondly, we need to look at the structure that I already mentioned to you, that you need to look at the structure and function of all the various parts of the eye using the diagram. So it's very important, grade 12s, that you have to have the diagram in front of you. Yes, you might not be good at drawing, but at least have a diagram in front of you. You can use the one in the mind gap, appendix I, and you use it and you write on it, because whatever that you wrote, my kids, you will never forget. We're going to look at binocular vision and its importance. We're going to look at also changes that occur in the human eye. That's what you're going to look at. So grade 12 is very important that you write the following down. So you're going to look at the eye. You're going to look at the parts of the eye. You're going to look at their importance, the structural suitability of that eye. What is that part there? There should be a purpose. There should be a reason why it's there. But I want you to take note. There are 3 functions that I want you to run with. That is binocular vision. That is pupillary mechanism. That is accommodation of the eye. This you must know. Because why are we doing this section? We are doing this section because we are saying the eyes are sensory organs of the body. So it's very important to do that one. So lastly, we're going to close up by looking at the nature and treatment of the visual defects. And this visual defect that you're talking about, we're going to talk about short-sightedness, long-sightedness, astigmatism, and cataract. Those are the 4. But then we want you to focus on the following. We want you to focus on the nature of these diseases and the rectification. What can we do? What measures can we do to solve the problems that we might be having? I hope you are ready. We're working now. Now, remember in life science, it's all about using the correct term. So I'm bringing to your attention the 5 common terms that I want you to know. Accommodation of the eye, where we're talking about the ability of the cortex, convex lens, to change the shape. So that why? You should be able to see. All right? Astigmatism, that's another one that you need to look at. Pupillary mechanism. Also, you're going to look at the yellow spot, but we'll break them down as we look at the structure of the diagram of the eye. Now, grade 12s, all organisms are able to detect change in the environment. So me and you, we are living in a changing environment. So there are many things that are happening around that could be harmful to us. So hence we have receptors. So the question comes, what are receptors? Receptors, any cell, any organ in our body that receives stimuli and turns it into a nerve, that's a receptor. So because we are living in an environment where changes are taking place, we need to have receptors that will protect us against any harm so that we become conscious of what is happening around us. So what could be stimulus? What could be the stimuli around us? We're talking about light, we talk about taste, we talk about smell. So today, we are doing the human eye because we are going to respond to light. When you look at in the mirror, what is it that you see? If you take your phone and take a selfie, this is what you see. And if you pay attention to my diagram here, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3. And basically, this is what you see in the mirror. So the question comes is, what is 1? And there, grade 12s, you'll know that that is a pupil, all right? Then a pupil, it's a hole that you find in the iris. And what does it do? It allows light to enter the eye. And we look at number 2. So basically, we are saying this black, it's your pupil. It's the hole in the eye that allows light to enter. Then we have number 2, which happens to be the iris. And your iris is the colored part of the eye. The colored part of it controls the size of the pupil. It regulates the amount of light that enters the eye. And how does it do that? By adjusting the size of the pupil. So there. The third one is the sclera. Is the outer tough white membrane. This layer of the eye that is made up of connective tissues. So we'll look into that. So basically, when you look at the eye, this is what you see. So you see the pupil, you see the sclera, and you see the iris. So there are other parts, external parts that you can see that we never mentioned. But I want you to pay attention to the following. Lacrimal glands and the conjunctiva, both of them, they're not in the exam guideline, but I decided to put them on so that you can know. Moreover, that we are challenged with COVID-19. Now, these two glands, they secrete fluids. And we know that the coronavirus attach itself to the fluid. So these glands, they secrete the fluid that moistens the conjunctiva, that removes waste. So in essence, we are saying they are important because they protect us against anything that can harm us. We also have eyelashes, even though ladies and gents these days, they tamper with them, but then eyelashes and eyelids, they protect the eye from dust, and foreign objects that can enter the eye. So these are very important. That is how your eye or my eye is protected. Now, grade 12s. This is a must know. The structure of the eye is a must know. So we're going to look at the internal structure of the eye. Then we start from the back inward. It's very important to do it that way. Because when you look at this eye, it's very important that you know that when you start from the back, because examiners expect you to be able to label each and every part that is depicted on the diagram. So I want you to take your pencil and your pen to try to draw an onion. And we know that the eye has 3 layers. And we're going to identify the layers together. So the outermost layer is a white, thick layer that surrounds the eye. And I want you to take note, it is called the sclera. This membrane is tough. It's inelastic. So therefore, it means that it cannot move. So what is it there for? It is for protection. So it protects all various parts within the eye. So also, the other function of the sclera, it serves as a point of attachment. So it attached because remember the eye, it's held together by 6 extrinsic muscles. So it allows the muscles to attach, the muscles attach themselves around the sclera. So we're going to look at the second layer. In this one, it is this part in the middle, right? And this part in the middle, we call it the choroid. It's a pigmented layer. The choroid is a pigmented layer. And one thing that you can see, look at this, it is red. What does that mean? It means that it is living. It is red because it is for nourishment. It is richly supplied with blood vessels. So grade 12, the sclera is a white layer, thick. It serves for attachment, and it protects the internal parts of the eye. And also the second layer is richly supplied with blood vessels for nourishment. It provides the eye with oxygen and food. And also, this very layer, choroid, it is a pigmented layer. So therefore, it means what? It means that it plays an important role in absorbing light. Now, I want us to focus on the very same choroid. Now, when you look at the diagram, when the choroid comes in front, we find that other organelles that are found here, the other structures there, we call it the ciliary body. And ciliary body, they are made of muscles. So therefore, that means they are able to stretch. And that is for movement. And I want you to take that. I want you to pay attention to that and remember that we have the ciliary body here, and they are made up of muscles. So that means they are able to move. They can contract and relax. Then we have here the suspensory ligaments that are attached to the ciliary body. So in essence, we are saying the choroid, as it starts from the back, once it comes in the front, we have the ciliary body attached to the choroid. Then we have the suspensory ligaments. Grade 12, remember, we said the eye protects us, and it must be able to allow light to come in. So therefore, the suspensory ligaments and the ciliary body, they need to play a vital role there because they are both made up of muscles. Now, we look at the third layer, and that one is the yellowish part on the eye. Now, this yellowish layer is called the retina. The retina is made up of cones and rods. Now, it is sensitive to light. Now, grade 12s, when you go still at the back, we have a spot there. In your diagrams, it shows like a greater line, greater than size, or convex on the membrane. That is where we find yellow spot, and is highly sensitive to light because it is having photoreceptors. Now, we'll come to that. And then as we go down, we have a blind spot where even image lens here, you'll not be able to see because it doesn't have any cones or rods. But we have a nerve that leaves the eye, and that carries out the impulse that has been converted by the retina. It carries out to the brain. So as we come forward, grade 12s, we've already seen now that we have the ciliary body and suspensory ligaments. The inside, this vacuum is called the vitreous humor. It gives the eye shape. Then we have another humor this side in front of the pupil. We call it the aqueous humor. Both of them, they play an important role in the eye. So remember the functions of the eye. The functions of the eye, I said, is pupillary mechanism and accommodation and binocular vision. So we want to see how these various parts of the eye contribute. How do they contribute to the three functions? How do they make sure that the eye perform its function? So we made mention that we have the ciliary body, we have the suspensory ligaments. Suspensory ligaments, grade 12s. They are like my fingers. And then if it's like my fingers, that means there is something that they are holding in here. So at that point, we call that the lens. And this is the lens. And the lens is made up of protein and water. We'll come into that. But now, the lens is held in position by the suspensory ligaments and the ciliary body. And I want to mention there that this lens is able to stretch. So it's an elastic organelle. So now in front here, you check the diagram, we have a continuation of the choroid there, but that is a colored part. We call that iris. can do that with your fingers. This becomes your iris. So now the iris, they are always in front of the lens. And then, because the two iris, they don't touch one another, there's a hole between them, and we've already mentioned that one that has to do with the pupil. And remember what we said, the pupil allows light. So light strikes this side, grade 12s, it must all be squeezed in. So now, because we cannot squeeze light, we are saying we bend light, and we call that refraction. So grade 12s, the pupil will allow light to come, to pass through. Then we have the cornea. The sclera, when it reaches in front, it bulges out, and that becomes the cornea. And the cornea is a transparent layer. Why is it transparent? It allows light to pass. Now let's look at closer to the eye. We've spoken to that. A tough, white, inelastic layer, that is the sclera. It gives protection, and that is that sclera. Now, it maintains the shape of the eye, it keeps parts together, and it provides points of attachment because it is tough. So you are able to look up and down because the muscles are attached to the sclera. Then the second point, the cornea, which is the white part. All right? Now, what happens there? The cornea, colleagues, grade 12s, remember, it bulges out. It's from the sclera, then it bulges out. The frontal part of the sclera is your cornea. It's a convex shape. It is over the pupil. All right? And this, it is covered by conjunctiva. So what happens there? It refracts light into the retina. We continue with a closer look of the eye. We have the iris. And I made mention that when I do like this on my fingers, colleagues, these two fingers of mine, it becomes the iris. Now, they don't touch one another, right? They are in front of the lens, right? They control the light that enters the pupil. Now, the space between the two, the space between the iris, we call, that is the hole, we call it the pupil. Now, in front of the cornea, there is that tiny membrane, we call it tiny membrane that is transparent. It keeps the eye moist. The pupil, I made mention that it is the hole in the iris where light enters. So when I look outside, the light strikes on your face, it has to refract, it has to bend so that it can get in the hole of the iris. Now we have the lens. Now, grade 12s. The lens is a flexible disc of transparent cell. Now, it is just behind the pupil. What does it do? Remember, we said the iris controls the amount of light that enters the eye. Whereas, and also the pupil allows the light to pass through. Then it gets into the lens, the converging lens, which allows the objects to see near and far. So the lens is going to play a role in accommodation. Now, this is what we're talking to. The lens, I just mentioned that it is held together by the suspensory ligaments. So on your sketch, you should all the time start by labeling the lens. The bulging part of the outward membrane, that will be your cornea in front of the eye. Now remember, it is covered with conjunctiva. All right? Then the two fingers that I was talking to, here, and this is your iris. And there is your suspensory ligaments, and there is your ciliary muscles. Grade 12 is very important that you know that. Now, the retina. When you looked at the longitudinal section of the eye, we made mention, but now look at this, closer look of this. This is where the optic nerve leaves the eye. And it leaves out the eye because it has electrical impulses, which it directs them to the occipital lobes of the brain. Now, here is your retina, the innermost layer of the eye. Light sensitive. It has yellow spot. So when the eye enters, when the light enters the eye, it strikes there by the retina because it has receptive cells called rods and cones. And this retina, it converts the light stimuli from the outside, it converts that into electrical impulses. And therefore, they will generate impulse. They will generate impulse from the stimulus and send it via the optic nerve. Now, because now the retina, the yellow spot has converted the impulse, the stimulus into impulse, the optic nerve will transmit the electrical impulses from the retina to the cerebral cortex in the brain. So it will move out. You go back, it will move out because it came out as stimulus and it lands on the yellow spot. And the cones, the photoreceptors, converted that into electrical impulses, and the nerves will take it out of the eye to the brain. And there we'll be talking about refraction because now, as it comes, the brain takes the inverted image and flips it over. So what happens there, or we'll look at that before we do the questions, let's check. Now, when the image strikes the yellow spot, it lands as an upside-down image. Then the yellow spot will convert the stimulus into impulses, electrical impulses, and send it through to the optic nerves. And hence we're saying the brain will take the inverted image and flips it over so that you can be able to see the real image as it was from the beginning. Now, I want us to look at this diagram. Quickly, I want you to be able to label every part that you see on this diagram. So you've already drawn that. So now, this is the diagram. So you should be able to see, look at where number 1 is, and look at where number 2 is, and there's number 3. So the best way to start, remember, I said the 3 walls of the eye. So you first identify the 3 walls of the eye. I believe you've done that, right? Then after you've labeled that, the horse, I will say I go that way, then because this one you should be able to know, all right? Then you should be able to know number 2, all right? Because that is where the message needs to go out of the eye. Then number 1 comes, look at the outer membrane, it bulges outside, that is number 9. Then we have number 13. Then we have number 8. So now, let's see. I believe now you have answered that. So basically what we are saying, there are 14 labels, possible labels that you'll be able to answer. Let's check if you got it correct. Number 1, optic nerve. Number 2 is your blind spot. Number 3, we have our yellow spot because it's found in the retina. So what will, if this is a yellow spot, what will be number 4? Number 4, it will be the retina because it is from the retina where we get the yellow spot. Then number 5 is our outer membrane. And I say to you, the outer membrane is a tough, white, inelastic layer. And we call that one choroid. And you should be able, look at the spelling, you should not say chorion, because that you will be going back to reproduce. It is choroid. Mind the spelling. Choroid. Number 6. Number 7. Ciliary body. Now, the ciliary body has this part. Look at the ciliary body. It's a thick part of the choroid, and that will be your ciliary body. Number 8, that will be your lens. Number 9, our sclera, right? It bulges when it arrives in front. And when it bulges, it creates this. And what is this? I said is a transparent membrane. And then we call it the cornea. And what is the function of the cornea? It allows light to pass through. Number 10 is the opening, the hole between the iris. So where will be the iris? Our iris should be 12. And the aqueous humor, and this will be your vitreous humor. And there's your suspensory ligaments. Now, I believe everyone got 14 out of 14. Now, you need to practice this grade 12s every day, labeling the structure of the eye. Because after you've labeled this, then you go and write with a different color pen, what is the function of the optic nerve? Is to take the message, the impulse, electric impulse out of the eye into the cerebral cortex. Right. Binocular vision. So for now, we've looked at the structure. Remember the exam guideline. Expected of us to know what receptors are. 2, it expected of us to know each and every structure of the eye. And not only know it, we should be able to point where it is and what it is, what function does it perform. So we've looked at that. Now we're looking at the 3 most functions that I said are vital for the eye. We start with the binocular vision. Now, binocular, the suffix bi means 2. So what does that mean? And vision, that means eye, to see, light, right? So that binocular vision refers to binocular, that means using two eyes to focus on an object. When you focus on an object using two eyes, because when you use one eye, the image becomes blurred. But now, when you it creates a two image. Check the definition: the ability to focus on an object using two eyes. So another aspect is that to perceive depth. The ability to go up the stairs and downwards is binocular vision or stereoscopic vision. Now, what is the importance of stereoscopic vision or binocular vision? I've already mentioned that being able to walk up and going down, the depth perception, all right? Precision, depth, and I'm able to look at the wider view, the field view. So it's because of binocular vision. Then also, binocular vision, grade 12, it enables you to perform those skills that you do on the stage when you perform at arts. Now, you can open your pencil case, and I want you to demonstrate binocular vision using the two pens. Now, supposing you close your left eye and try to take the two pens away from you and try to touch them. It's going to be difficult to do that because of you're using one eye. But when you use both eyes, it's quite easy. So that is binocular vision. So if you close one eye and do the same exercise, it's going to be difficult to do that because you're using one eye. So hence we are saying binocular vision is the ability to focus on an object using two eyes. And those two eyes, they create a single image. Now, we've looked at the function, one function of the eye, binocular vision. And we've also stressed on its significance. So now, the other function of the eye, of the human eye, we call it accommodation. We'll come to pupillary mechanism. Now, accommodation, not accommodation hotels and all those things. Accommodation in life science has to do with near and far vision. So it refers to focusing, the focus on light on the retina. So hence we spoke about near, and when you are closer to me, it's near vision, less than 6 meters. When you are far away, plus more than 6 meters, it's far vision. So it has to do with the change in the focal length. Now, remember that our lens, it's convex in nature. So it changes. It changes. So I want you to look at the animation here. So it changes. It's concave, convex, convex, concave. So that's very important that you need to know that cave is concave and this is convex. So if the light strikes this side, it's concave. So what's going to happen this side? The image this side will be longer. So we'll look at that. Now, I told you accommodation is the ability of lens to focus near vision and far vision. So in this case, grade 12, you need to study one scenario. Near vision. When you study near vision, then there's no need for you to study far vision, because far vision automatically becomes the opposite. So what's happening when I'm seeing an object closer to me? So now, accommodation of, remember, the parts that plays a role in accommodation. It will be the ciliary muscles, the suspensory ligaments, and the lens. So, you know, when you talk about accommodation, you talk about ciliary muscles, we talk about suspensory ligaments, then you're going to talk about lens. What are they doing? What's going to happen? What are these parts going to do for the eye to perform this function? So when an object is closer to me, what's happening to the ciliary muscles? The ciliary muscles will contract. So when the ciliary muscles contract, the sclera will move forward. The ciliary muscles will contract. When the ciliary muscles contract, the sclera, it's pulled forward. So when the sclera is pulled forward, now, because remember we said the ciliary muscles, they are moving. So the suspensory ligaments, because this one is moving, the suspensory ligaments, what will they do? They will slack. They will not be tight. So the ciliary muscle slack, and the suspensory slack, the ciliary muscles contract. And then what's going to happen to the lens now? The lens, then the tension on the lens decreases. There's no tension. Why? Because the suspensory ligaments, they've slacked. All right? Then this lens becomes convex, more rounder. So it's very important to remember that. Near vision, the ciliary muscles contract. When the ciliary muscles contract, the suspensory ligaments slacken, and there is no tension on the lens. So what's happening to the lens? The lens becomes more convex, more rounder. And when the lens becomes more rounder, what's going to happen? The refractive power of the lens increase, because the lens now is more rounder. So it's able to refract more light. Then the focal length decreases. There's no strength. The focal length decreases because the lens is more rounder. And what happens now? A clear image is now landing on the retina. So for you to remember, we've created a numeric for you. CC SS TD. Tension on the lens decrease, right? And then the lens become convex. And that is what happens when you see near vision. When I look at a person closer to me, that's what's happening. The ciliary muscles will contract, and when the ciliary muscles contract, what happens to the sclera? The sclera, it moves forward, it's pulled forward. And when the sclera is pulled forward, therefore, the suspensory ligaments slacken. And when the suspensory ligaments slacken, therefore, there's no tension on the lens. that the lens becomes more wider, more round, more convex. Then we are saying the focal length, it decreases. The focal length will decrease because our lens is more convex. Then the image is formed on the retina. Remember, the purpose of this is that the image must fall on the retina. So the image must fall on the retina. Therefore, the focal length, because the lens is round, the focal length will decrease. So I'm appealing to each one of you to remember the mnemonic that we have there. Now, far vision. Far vision, it will be the opposite of near vision. Remember, with near vision, we said the ciliary muscles contract. So, because it's far vision, the ciliary muscle will do the opposite. They will relax. And when the ciliary muscles relax, the sclera will move away from the lens, meaning the lens will go back to its normal position. So the lens is not convex. So it goes back to the normal position. And what's going to happen to the suspensory ligaments? The suspensory ligaments will be tight. And when the suspensory ligaments becomes tight, therefore there is too much tension on the lens. Because your lens now is more flatter. It's been pulled. And reflective power, the focal length increases because now the image is far. So it seems like you're squinting your eye to perceive the object. Then the image will land on the retina. So, grade 12, you remember only one scenario. Only one scenario, then you'll know the other one. The examiner will ask you about one scenario. Remember that every time. And that is accommodation. Now, when you recap, accommodation has to do with the lens. Accommodation has to do with the lens, the ciliary muscles, the suspensory ligaments. So remember the fingers, your hand, and that is accommodation. When you talk about accommodation, remember what we're talking about. Now, we look at pupillary mechanism. Now, pupillary, what are we talking about? We're talking about the pupil. And where do we find the pupil? The pupil is the hole between the iris. Now, so this has to do with, remember we're looking at the eye, it's all about the light. Pupillary mechanism is about light. Like you went out during the night and you don't want your parents to see, you sneak inside, you don't switch on the light. It's dark, what's happening? So you are trying to close your eyes so that you can get inside, so that you squint, that is dark. So you're going to look at dim light and bright light. So you have to look at this, because this is what you talk, pupillary mechanism, you look at that. And we should remember that the iris has circular muscles and radial muscles. So when you talk about pupillary mechanism, you have to talk about not ciliary muscles, you're talking about circular muscles. And you're going to talk about radial muscles. Then what's going to happen to the pupil? Accommodation, 3 marks. You have to tell me about this part. The radial muscles, what will they do when I'm driving in the night? What will the circular muscles do when I'm driving during the night? And what is the action of the pupil? So that's the reason why we talk about pupillary mechanism. In bright light, grade 12s, in bright light, Mr. Makata just said to you, you focus on those three. The circular muscles, the radial muscles, and the whole, which is the pupil. What's happening during the day, bright light? The circular muscles will contract. The circular muscles of the iris will contract. When the circular muscles of the iris contract, the radial muscles will relax. There is no way that both of them can contract. So the circular muscles of the iris will contract. When the circular muscles of the iris contract, what's going to happen to my radial muscles? They will relax. And when they relax, the pupil will constrict, will become more smaller because there is too much light striking the eyes. That's why sometimes you feel like closing your eyes, because there is too much light, because too much light will damage the retina. So that's what's happening during the day. So when there is too much light, the pupil will constrict, will become smaller. And for the pupil to become smaller, that means the radial muscles must relax and the circular muscles must contract. Then the amount of light entering the eye will be reduced. So, write for me what will happen during the night then. Because I gave you what's happening during the day. What will happen during the night in dim light when there is no light? The opposite should happen. You have 2 minutes to write, and we'll just check that is correct. Remember, 3 things I need to see there. The circular muscles, the radial muscles, and the pupil, the reaction. There is no light. Are you done writing? Let's check. Now, I've created another numeric for you to remember, acronym to remember, debit and credit. D stands for dim. In dim light, the radial muscles contract. The radial muscles contract. I said for you to remember, you write debit and credit. So you're going to write debit in accounting, they write it like that, and credit, C to the power 2. So you're going to do like that. All right? So now that means I'm going to have 2 C's because, all right? Now I indicated there. Dim light, radial muscles contract, circular muscles relax. And then what's going to happen? The pupil will dilate. 3 marks. Then the amount of light entering the eye will increase because the pupil has dilated. It became wider because you are looking for light in the night. So pupillary mechanism, you control the amount of light that enters the eye. The process of controlling the amount of light that enters the eye. So it's 2 scenarios, grade 12s. What happens during the night? During the night, we don't have light. We don't want to talk about what's happening, but during the night, we don't expect light. So what's happening to the radial muscles? What's happening to the scapular muscles? What's happening to your pupil? Then if you know these three, then you'll be able to tell us that during the night, the pupil will dilate because there is no light. And for the pupil to dilate, we need the scapular muscles to relax. The scapular muscles must relax while the radial muscles must contract. And there, the pupil becomes wider. So in an exam, should the examiner give you a diagram like that or like that, you just by looking at this, the size of the pupil is smaller as compared to that. So therefore, this means during the night because the pupil is bigger. And the radial muscles, they have contracted. So you focus on this. I hope it's clear. The three functions, we've looked at binocular vision, using two eyes to look at an object, right? We looked at accommodation. Accommodation has to do with near vision, 6 meters, and far vision. And we looked at pupillary mechanism, where we look at the pupil. Remember, accommodation has to do with the lens. Accommodation has to do with the lens. It has to do with the ciliary body. It has to do with the suspensory ligaments. Accommodation has to do with the ciliary body, which is made up of muscles, meaning it should be able to move, it should be able to contract and relax. And we talk about the suspensory ligaments also that needs to move. And we look at the lens, which is elastic. So that means it should be able to become flat and round. Now, I said only one scenario you need to know. What happens to the pupil during dim light? And during the night, there is no sufficient light. So the pupil needs to dilate. And for the pupil to dilate so that it gets light, it requires the scapular muscles to relax. And when the scapular muscles relax, the radial muscles will have to contract. Debit and credit. Right. Let's look at the question. The question was taken from September 2017 GDE question paper. It was question 2. Now remember grade 12s. Study, label every part before you answer the questions. Now, you look at this, right? Because you're expected to label every part that is depicted here. So now, I said the 3 membranes. Now, the innermost layer is the retina. And on the retina, we have the yellow spot. So our retina will be I. All right? Our retina will be, all right, H, and I will be a yellow spot because it shows a greater than sign there. And then we have, all right, check that one. Then we have the lens here. We have the suspensory ligaments. And this dot that is given there will be your ciliary body. And the fingers that I was mentioning there in front of the lens, it becomes your iris. The opening between the iris is your pupil. The cavage, the bulging part in front of the eye is your cornea. And A is the outermost layer of the eye, which is your sclera. Okay? Now, let's look at the question. Write the letter and name. That's what the examiner asks of you. You write the letter and the name of the region where the clearest image is formed. The clearest, not refraction, the clearest, that will be our yellow spot. Right? Write down the sequence which light passes in order to reach structure H. Structure H is our retina. Now, the sequence, light from outside getting inside, that's what they want. The sequence in order. So light, remember, light strikes from this side. And it has to refract, it has to bend. It passes through the outermost, the bulgim, which is the cornea. It passes through the aqueous humor, through the pupil, through the convex lens, then vitreous humor, retina. Light has to pass through B, cornea, the pupil, the lens, before it reaches the retina. And remember, 3 marks. So that means we need 3 parts that you needed to indicate. So remember, the light from the outside, ultraviolet rays, hits the front. So now it needs to refract, it needs to bend so that it can get in through the pupil. So it passes through the cornea, and here we have the watery fluid, which is our aqueous humor, then the pupil, then the lens, then the vitreous humor, then the retina. And you get your marks. Now the second question, it said describe the change that occurs in structure E. So now you underline change. What is structure E? Structure E is our ciliary muscle. All right? Because J is our suspensory ligaments. So what are we talking about there? We're talking about accommodation. So they say the change that occurs in the structure labeled E, G, J. And we mentioned that J is suspensory ligaments. That's why it's very important to label the entire eye before you do the questions. So you go back and check. J is our suspensory ligament. E is our ciliary body. G is our lens. What's going to happen to the lens? Right? Now, what is going to happen? It says when focusing on a bird that is flying off more than 6 far vision into the distance. So far vision, what's happening to the ciliary body? It relaxes. And when the ciliary body relaxes, what happens to the suspensory ligaments? They become tight. All right? So the suspensory ligaments, they become tight because now the ciliary body has relaxed and the suspensory ligaments become tight. There will be tension on the lens. And what happens again? Okay? Light will enter the eye, because the lens will be more flatter, banana shape. It will not be rounder, it will have stretched. And remember, grade 12's 7 marks. So what we expect you to have written, the ciliary muscles, which is E, relaxes, the ciliary body goes back to its normal position and it moves backward. And there is tension on the lens, the suspensory ligaments, right? So hence I said banana shape, because now its stretch is being pulled up and the refractive power is decreasing. Now remember, the last point will be the image now will be clearer on the retina. Now, the last section, diseases of the eye. We have short-sightedness, long-sightedness, astigmatism, and cataracts, right? You are going to look at this. Remember, the exam guidance said we look at the nature and the treatment. What is short-sightedness? Short-sightedness can be caused when your eyeball is long, when the lens cannot be flat. So what happens? The image falls. Remember, the intention is the image should fall on the retina. But now, because the eyeball is long, the image falls short. The image falls in front of the retina. So what happens now? The image becomes blurry. So short-sightedness, this person, Mr. Makata, cannot see objects that are far because my eyeball is long. So the image, it falls in front of the retina. So what can I do? I need to be given converging lenses. So lenses that I need to wear, they need to be concave. So that's what you need to do, so that it brings the object nearer, so that the object should fall on the retina. Let's look at this diagram. Remember, it's convex, this shape of the cornea, convex, concave. So because short-sightedness, the eyeball is long. So now the image falls in front of the retina. It's supposed to fall there, it falls there. So far objects, they become blurry. I can't see them, but I can see objects that are nearer. But the ones that are far, I can't see. So it's because the object is falling in front of the retina instead of falling on top of the retina. Now, I'm supposed to be given concave lenses, concave lenses, so that the image should fall on the retina. The second sickness is long-sightedness. So now, short-sightedness, because the image falls just not on the retina, just before, what will be long-sightedness? So even here, if you master short-sightedness, it should be easy for you to master long-sightedness. Because short-sightedness person cannot see objects that are far. They fall in front of the retina. But now, the long-sighted person cannot see objects that are close by because the image falls behind the retina. So you should remember that the short and long. So what's happening? Remember when you spoke about the short-sightedness, we said the eyeball is long, more convex. So in this case, because we're looking at long-sightedness, the eyeball is being too round. So images, they are falling behind. And the intention was that the image should fall on the retina, but now it's falling behind because the lens cannot be more convex. And this is more common on older people like myself. So grade 12, what can we do? We must give Mr. Makata conversion lenses to rectify the problem that he's encountering. So he must wear convex lenses. So let's check this out. Look, the convex, the image is far. So we must give Mr. Makata the convex lenses so that the image should fall on the retina. The third deficiency of the eye is astigmatism. Remember, the cornea is bulgy in front and is transparent, and it allows light to pass. But now once the cornea is uneven, so therefore, that means when the light strikes the cornea, it's striking the surface that is uneven. So the object that I'm going to see is going to be blurry because of the unevenness of the surface of the cornea. So that is astigmatism. So that means the image is going to fall on two parts inside because the cornea, it's uneven. This is the normal cornea, and this is astigmatism. So when you look at the two diagrams, the vision is distorted here, it's blurry, it's not clear. But then when the cornea is even, it's more clearer. So what could be done? What should a person do? They must give the lens according to the surface of the cornea. So your lens will be designed according to the curvaceousness of the surface of your cornea. So the three sicknesses of the eye that we've done, the rectifying method, it will be lenses. Short-sightedness, we can give a person the lens, the glasses. We can give the person with long-sightedness the glasses. We can also give the person with astigmatism the glasses according to the shape of the surface of the cornea. The last sickness we're dealing with is cataracts. Remember, the lens, the inelastic lens comprises of water and protein. So this sickness normally attacks elderly people. What happens there? The lens denature. The protein inside the lens denatures. And when the protein denatures, that means it becomes more cloudy, all right? And it obstructs the light. It obstructs the passage of light. So hence, when you look at the lens here, it's more cloudy. So what could be done to rectify the scenario? Look at the lens. It's more cloudy. The denaturing of the protein in the lens. That's why we're saying it mostly attacks the elderly people. So they will have to undergo surgery in order to rectify the lens. So remember the nature and the treatment. The treatment of cataracts, surgery. The treatment of astigmatism, wearing glasses that are formulated according to the surface of the cornea. Short-sightedness, wearing converging lenses. Long-sightedness, wearing converging lenses. So out of the four, the first three, when you write wearing glasses, contact lenses, you'll be given a mark. Now, grade 12s, when you are given multiple choice, you cannot just close your eye and pick and choose. So we are asking of you that you read the instruction very carefully. You need to read, you are given 4 options. When you are given 4 options, 2 will be totally wrong. So every time I'm asking you to look for those ones that are completely wrong and cancel them out. You'll be left with 2. Then go back to the statement and read it with understanding. Then look at your remaining 2. Then you'll circle that remaining, the one that you think is the correct one. Then you go back and read and you verify. Never leave the multiple choice question unanswered. Remember, it is 2 marks, and you'll need it. So never leave the multiple choice unanswered. Choose carefully. Read the stem, cover out the possible answers, read the stem, the whole statement with understanding. And think carefully about the question, what is this statement saying? Then cancel out, look at the 4 options, cancel out those that are not related to the statement. Then you'll be left with 2 that are possible. And then go back and read your statement again, and you'll get your correct answer. Now let's look at this question. Remember we said, we are not going to look at the possible answers. We have to read the entire statement with understanding. Which one of the following occurs when you look up from reading a book to look at a distant mountain on a clear sunny day? This has to do with accommodation. Right. Our answers, they gave us pupils. The pupil will dilate, the ciliary muscles will relax, the lens becomes more convex, radial muscles. Right. So what's happening? Our answer will be this. You delete that which is wrong. A is out. Our answer, therefore, because this one doesn't work, doesn't speak to accommodation. And what else does not work to radial muscles? Right? Because accommodation, we're talking about the suspensory ligaments, we're talking about the lens, we're talking about the ciliary. So our answer should be B. B is our answer. Right? The second answer, second question. When the pupil of the human eye, you see now, is not accommodation, the pupil. So we're talking about what? Pupillary mechanism. And when you talk about pupillary mechanism, remember we're talking about the iris and the pupil, right? We're talking about the iris, that means I'm talking about the secular muscles and the radial muscles and the pupil. So they are saying when the pupil of the human eye constrict, becomes smaller, and the pupil becomes smaller when during the day, bright light. The receptors and the effector are respectively there. So yellow spot is out. Yellow spot is out. So you are left with 2. So you go back to the question. So the pupil of the human eye constrict. And what's happening here? Now this becomes wrong because it is ciliary muscles. We are talking about secular muscles. So we are left with B. Because pupillary mechanism, we talk about secular muscles, not ciliary muscles. We're talking about the secular muscles, the radial muscles, and the pupil. So our answer will be B. Now, we are looking at this diagram. Here we are given the eyeball. Then we're looking at that one. What are the questions? They say in the diagram below, show two eyes focus on an object at different distances. All right? The object on which X and Y are focused. So this is X, this is Y. So our answer here, it will be B. Okay? Let's look at this one. Study the diagram below. Right. The part of the eye that contains blood vessels and a brown pigment. The part of the eye that contains blood vessels and brown pigment. Blood vessels and pigment, a pigmented layer. Our answer will be B. When the ciliary muscles contract, when the ciliary muscles, not secular, the suspensory, that means this question is on accommodation, because we're also talking about suspensory ligaments. When the ciliary muscles contract and the suspensory ligaments become slack, you are looking at near vision. When the ciliary muscles again relax, the suspensory ligaments become tight. So therefore, the lens, that means this is distance vision, then it is that, because the lens is tight. When the circular muscles and the radial muscles relax, you are looking at when the circular muscles contract and radial muscles relax. So the muscles contract, the radial muscles, now it's circular, not ciliary. So therefore we're talking to pupillary mechanism. Now, circular muscles contract, the radial muscles relax. So what's happening to the pupil? Your pupil becomes smaller because there is too much light. Grade 12s. Older people are seen to hold books arm's length when reading. We talk about older people. They are seen to hold books at arm's length, like that. Because the refractive power of the lens has decreased with age. We talk about older people, myself. Refractive power of the lens has increased. The lens has become less transparent with age. The eyeball has become larger with age. So your answer will be what? Your answer in this case, because the refractive power of the lens has decreased. That's why I'm holding my book there. So the answer will therefore be A. The parts of the eye involved in pupillary mechanism. Pupillary mechanism. We've mentioned that one. That should be easy for you. The pupil, ciliary muscles, suspensory ligaments, the lens. The question says the parts of the eye involved in pupillary mechanisms. So what you're going to do, pupillary mechanism, you cannot say this one because of the lens that is there, because we talk about pupillary mechanism, and this one is out altogether. Then what happens? We are left with two. We're looking at the parts. So our answer is B. Suspensory ligaments is out. We came to the end of our lesson, grade 12. I want you to remember, when studying the human eye, you focus on knowing each parts of the eye, each and every part of the eye, its structural suitability. Why are we having that part there? Why? What's the importance? What role does it play? And we look at binocular vision, looking at an object using with both eyes, and in depth, that is stereoscopic vision, and it gives us a wider range. Then you look at pupillary mechanism. Pupillary mechanism, I told you, grade 12s, that it has to do with the pupil. And when we talk about the pupil, that means we're going to talk about the iris. the colorful part of the eye. And the colorful part of the eye has radial muscles and circular muscles. So pupillary mechanism, you have to speak about the pupil, you have to speak about the radial muscles, you have to speak about the circular muscle and the pupil. Accommodation, you are going to talk about the suspensory ligaments. You are going to talk about the ciliary body. You're going to talk about the shape of the lens. That's accommodation. And remember, you only study one scenario in both. If it's pupillary mechanism, what's happening to the pupil during dim light? And what's happening to the ciliary muscles? Ciliary muscles when you are reading a book far, more than 6 meters away. That has to do with accommodation. And thereafter, you look at the deficiencies of the eye. And remember the deficiencies of the eye, you only focus on the 4. You look at the nature and the treatment. And we've looked at grade 12's short-sightedness. You looked at long-sightedness. You looked at astigmatism, and you also looked at cataracts. I wish you all the best with you studying for the exam. Remember, grade 12s, this phase will pass. Surely we are going to overcome. Stay home, wash your hands, relax, study hard. I repeat, we're surely going to survive. All the best with the coming exams. Thank you.